Hello, Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be doing a mass review roundup. Yes, it is that time of the year again where there are so many movies coming out, and just not enough time to shoot individual videos for every single one. So we're going to be doing two of these. We're going to be reviewing 5 movies per video. This one is going to be strictly around movies that came out here in the last week for the Christmas season, and then the other video is going to be stuff that's kind of come out in the last month or so. But today we're going to be reviewing 5 films that came out during this past week. We've got Rebel Moon, the latest Zack Snyder film on Netflix. We've got the rom-com Anyone But You. We've got the last DCEU film, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. One of the Oscar favorites, Poor Things. And, of course, one of my more anticipated films of the year, Iron Claw. Like I said, these aren't going to be as normally as long, or at least I'm trying not to make these normally as long as other reviews because we're reviewing so many films in one video. But hopefully we'll get enough of this out there so you guys get a good idea of what I think about the films plus the rating for it. So let's go ahead and jump into Netflix's Rebel Moon. Now this is a film, like I said, everyone with Zack Snyder, you got your Zack Snyder huge fans, and then you got the people who are just kind of like, it is what it is. And I'm kind of in the it is what it is. There's good Zack Snyder, like 300 and Dawn of the Dead. And then you've got, Zack Snyder where they're just not that good. Like Sucker Punch and BVS and Justice League. Not Snyder Cut. I'm not going to bash the Snyder. I actually like the Snyder Cut. I will say this for Zack Snyder. If I ever was making a movie, there's certain directors I want to use for certain things. For, action sequences, I probably would, or explosions, I'd want to use Michael Bay. For dialogue, probably Tarantino. For Zack Snyder, visuals, the way stuff looks, the coolness effect of it. Because that's one thing that Zack Snyder is fantastic at, is he knows how to make stuff look cool. He may overuse the slow-mo quite a bit. He does in this film as well. But he always makes everything look good. There's never been a Zack Snyder film that I've gone into going, wow, this looks like shit. I've never had to do that with Zack Snyder ever. So when we heard he was going to be doing this two-parter called Rebel Moon, everyone was basically calling this Zack Snyder's version of Star Wars. And while, yes, it's very Star Wars-esque, there's many points in the during the movie I was watching, I was like, oh, he's Han Solo, or oh, this is Luke, or Rey, or something like that, or this is Tatooine. It doesn't, overtly copy Star Wars or anything like that. There's no, The Force, or at least not yet anyway. But it is his version of doing kind of a Star Wars type of film. The general plot of Rebel Moon Part 1, The Child of Fire, is when a peaceful settlement on the edge of a distant moon finds itself threatened by the armies of a tyrannical ruling force, a mysterious stranger living among its villagers become their best hope for survival. So like I said, very Star Wars-esque. You got, I think they call it the motherland is basically like the Empire in this movie. Your lead is Sofia Boutella. Many people know her from, Tom Cruise's The Mummy, or I like to know her from, Kingsman Secret Service, which she was fantastic in that. But we got a real solid cast around. You got Jaimin Hansu, who I love. He plays General Titus. You've got Ed Skrein, who many people know as Francis from Deadpool. He was the main antagonist in the film as Atticus Noble. You got Michelle Huzaman, who, as well with Ed Skrein, both played Dario in Game of Thrones, but many people know Michelle's performance most. Ray Fisher from Zack Snyder's Justice League and Justice League, he plays Blood Axe. Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy, I love this dude. He plays Kai, which is kind of like the Han Solo-esque kind of character. You got Anthony Hopkins, who plays Jimmy. He's this robot in the film. But you basically have a huge assortment cast, much like you would get with Star Wars. And I would say for the first 20 minutes or so, you're kind of getting the, what's it like to live on this planet? I honestly, for the life of you, cannot remember the name of the planet, and we're going to touch on that here very, very shortly. You get kind of the lay of the land, you kind of get the set pieces up, who these characters are, what's this motherland, how is the galaxy or the world kind of being treated, and then we get to basically the main quest, which is basically Sofia Boutella's Cora is basically trying to put together a group, kind of like honestly, if you think about it, this is actually more like the Magnificent Seven than it is Star Wars, because you have a village that's kind of under tyranny and under attack of about this group of bandits, except it's kind of the Empire for Star Wars. And she is trying to collectively get a group of warriors to come to this village and defend it. It's very much like Magnificent Seven. And the main problem, much like a lot of Zack Snyder films, is it's the narrative. It's the story. It's not that it's bad. It's that I feel like, and I already know there is, but we didn't get that. I know there's a longer cut. There's a longer version of this film. And they kind of had to cut it up to, I guess, make it 2 parts or something like that. And the problem with this is that you can greatly see that this movie has been chopped up to fit a certain time length, which, why do we care about a time length when this movie's in Netflix? If it'd be one thing if it was in theaters, but it's on Netflix, let it be as long as it wants to be, or make it a series. Who knows? But the main problem as we're going through this film, besides the fact that it looks amazing, it does, and there's no outright bad performance in the film. There, except for maybe the army guys in the very beginning. They're very over the top and very much playing the stereotype that we see in a lot of movies when you see armies kind of taking over a small village. It's kind of eye-rolling. But the main problem is that once we go on the actual quest with Korra, it's a lot of rinse and repeat about 4 or 5 times. You know, she goes to this new location, she's looking for this one person, we see the person has a kind of a cool-esque kind of introduction, then that person just joins the team, go to the next place, try to find this person, here's the next person, cool introduction of that person, okay, they're part of the team, and rinse and repeat, and rinse and repeat. We do that about 4 or 5 times. But here's the problem. Outside of the introduction of the said character, we're never having these moments of these characters interacting with one another or growing their character arcs or really making you actually give a damn about these characters. Now, the Gunner and Korra, we were around them for like the first 20 minutes of the movie, so we know who they are. But we get to meet, you know, like Ray Fisher's Blood Axe, or Charlie Hunnam's Kai, or Stas Nair's Tyrek, or Jaimin Hansu's Titus, and we're around these characters, but we're never given, like, moments where they're, like, interacting or talking or doing anything that gives me any worry about their well-being or any connective tissue to care about these characters on whether they live or die. And that's a huge problem with this film, is because at the end of the movie, if you had asked me, name this random character, I could probably name the big stars, like Hansu's and Hunnam and Botella, because, you know, I'm attached to the actor and the actress, not the character of these. And that is the main problem in the film, is that when certain characters live or die, you're like, oh no, that actor is gone. Not because that character has done anything to leave a mark on me to make me care about the character. It's just more or less, I won't get to see that actor anymore on the screen. And that's what really is, the long and short of it, the failing aspect of Rebel Moon. The story, for the first 20 minutes, you're building good blocks, but then it's just, we're collecting a team, but we're not giving a damn about this team. Now, I did see the trailer for the second part, which comes out April 19th, and it does look like, at least looks like, a lot of the stuff that I wanted to happen in the first film, we might be getting in the second film, which, once again, then why break these up into 2 films? Because at that point, you're really making it hard for people to really care about these characters in part 1. What makes them want to go back and watch part 2, other than someone like me who either A, reviews it, or B, is a completionist and just needs to see how the story ends? They really kind of did Rebel Moon a disservice by really not letting you actually care about these characters, much like we would in A New Hope when we cared about Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, R2, and C-3PO. Because at the end of the day, outside of me having to know this because I'm reviewing this for you guys right now, I couldn't remember a single character's name. I remember the actors and the actresses who played them, but I couldn't tell you what their characters' names were outside of me looking at the cast list right now. I will say Ed Skrin's Atticus Noble is probably the highlight of the film, and I would say Charlie Hunnam's Kai as a Han Solo-esque character, he's fun. But that's because I like Charlie Hunnam. It's not because the character Kai is anything special. He's very bare bones Han Solo in this movie. But like I said, at the end of the day, when we do get some action, it's your typical Zack Snyder-esque kind of action. Looks cool, a little too much on the slow-mo. There are certain characters that show up and you look like they're going to have a big character arc, but then they're completely dropped and you don't see them for the rest of the film, but it looks like they're going to be in the second part, so it's kind of hard to judge this right now because it very much feels like half a film. Now, in April, when we see part 2, maybe I'll feel a little differently about this because I'll see everything as the full picture. But right now, this movie feels very incomplete. It looks nice, but that's all I can really say for it. So I'm going to be a little harsh, but I'm also going to be very fair on this. When it comes to Rebel Moon, I think you need to see it right now? The answer is no. Do I think when the second one comes out on April 19th, we should check it out? Sure, because we'll have a full story to it at that point. But right now, I don't need basically say you need to check this out now. Wait till April, watch them together. Maybe it'll be a more fuller story and you'll like part 1 better with the connective tissue to it. Maybe I will. I'll probably rewatch this before I watch part 2 in April. But right now, I'm going to give Rebel Moon part 1 a 63%. Coming up next, we have the rom-com Anyone But You. Now, this is a movie that Brian and myself have been talking about pretty much since it's been announced. And the real reason why we've been talking about this is because we love one of the leads in this film, and that is Glenn Powell. I've been a fan of Glenn Powell since the Fox horror show Scream Queens. He was the highlight of that show. He was hilarious in every scene. He basically stole every scene he was in. And then we got to see him in other things. I think it was 2018. He did a rom-com on Netflix with Zoe Deutsch called Set It Up. Loved that movie. Fantastic chemistry between those two. Makes you want to root for this guy. Makes you want to see this guy become a huge star. We got to see him, I think it was last year in Top Gun Maverick. He basically played the asshole character, the Iceman of the new generation. And he was great in it. I actually kind of cared about his character more than Miles Teller's character in that movie. But now we're getting him in this rom-com, Anyone But You. The publicity around this movie was really high. You know, him and Sydney Sweeney, they were pretty much acting like a couple throughout the whole deal, even though we know they're not together in real life. But that was kind of the driving force of this movie, was more the publicity behind it. Because, I'm sorry, when the first trailer came out, didn't really do much for me. Didn't really sell me on it. Didn't really make me care about wanting to watch this or anything like that. The only reason why I wanted to watch this movie is because Glenn Powell's in it. And I don't know Sydney Sweeney. I never watched, I think it was Euphoria is what she's on. I never watched that show. Everyone's like losing their minds over Sydney Sweeney. I have no idea why. I mean, she's not unattractive or anything, but I haven't heard anything about her acting ability. All I, hear about her is that she's a beautiful woman. And she's fine. Okay, cool, whatever. But there's nothing about this movie that's really making me want to see this outside of Glenn Powell in a rom-com type role. So going into this, I went in with very low expectations. But the general plot for Anyone But You is, after an amazing first date, Bea and Ben's fiery attraction turns ice cold until they find themselves unexpectedly reunited at a destination wedding in Australia. So they do what any two mature adults would do, pretend to be a couple. The main aspect of a film like this is that you got to have the two leads have good chemistry together. You have to want to see them to be together. You have to want to watch them interact together, whether they're a couple or they hate each other's guts. The main part is you got to give a shit about these two leads. And frankly, I just didn't. Glenn Powell's charming. I mean, he always is. I mean, that's why I said I'm a fan of the guy. I love watching him on screen. He's a charming dude. But even his character of Ben, not necessarily a likable character. And the reason being is because we get this moment of him in the beginning of the movie, with this amazing first date that him and Bea have. But then it immediately gets turned into this kind of angry hatred thing that we get towards, which is the crux of the film. And then it's just him and Bea kind of faking it till they make it. And you don't get to have these moments with Ben that really makes you just want to like the character, except that you just like Glenn Powell. And if you like Glenn Powell, then you'll be fine with his character, him throughout the movie. But it doesn't make you want to love the Ben character. He seems like a okay guy, cool. But in a rom-com movie, you want to love the lead, or both leads in this case. Sydney Sweeney. Now actually seeing her perform, I mean, I don't get it. I really don't. Her performance is very she's very much a blank stare kind of person. Like, I can hear her giving emotion, but I'm not seeing her give emotion. I don't see much chemistry between her and Glenn Powell. If anything, it just made me more and more want to see him and Zoe Deutsch together again from Set It Up, because I think Zoe and Ben's chemistry worked really well on that film, and I would have loved to have seen Zoe in this movie. There's funny moments. I'm not saying this movie's awful by any means. It's just, You know, it's a rom-com that I watched that I probably will never watch again. It's not one that I necessarily would recommend. It looks nice because they're in Australia and they were shooting on site, which is nice. You don't have a green screen or anything around it, so, you know, where they're at is where they're at. The cast around them, Alexandra Shipp, I like her. She gets little moments here and there, but nothing real great. Ben's friend Pete, played by Agata, awful actor. He's not good in this movie. He's cringy at best for most of this. Dermot Mulroney plays Leo, which is like B's dad. They play him over the top kooky through this film, and I mean, it's okay for what it is, but I kind of wish they did him a little bit differently in the film. But the cast around them is so kind of stupidly corny and annoying that it just kind of felt like everyone's in on the movie, that it's a rom-com, and they even point it out in the film, which kind of just almost made it worse. But the characters surrounding Ben and B are also so annoying. Either they're cheesy likable, or they're just like, do you guys really, you know, hang out with people like this? Because the B and Ben character just don't feel like two people that would hang out with this group. So at the end of the day, I mean, I liked it for Ben. I didn't really care for Sydney Sweeney's performance. It really didn't do anything for me. Honestly, if I had to choose someone to be in this movie with him, I would have liked to have seen him and Alexandra Shipp actually be the two leads in this film, because I would buy them more as a couple, outside of just putting Pretty Man and Pretty Woman together, watch them interact and kiss at the end, because it's very predictable. This is bare bones, exactly like every rom-com film. You know exactly when the twist is going to happen. You know exactly when, you know, everything's supposed to go beat for beat for beat. There's never a moment in this movie that actually throws you for a loop or makes you go, huh, that's something new and unique, and it never goes there for you. So for me, Anyone But You, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're a real big fan of Sydney Sweeney. Would not understand why. Or if you're a big fan of Glenn Powell like we are, then check it out just because you want to see Glenn Powell in a lead film. For me, I'm going to give Anyone But You a 59%. Going to the next film, we have Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, I didn't hate the first Aquaman. Granted, it's not it's got its issues. It's not a perfect film by a long shot. But I liked Jason Momoa's Aquaman. I mean, granted, he's not like normal Aquaman. He's kind of like the dude bro kind of Aquaman. But that was fun. It was unique. Momoa's having fun with the character, and if he's having fun, I'm enjoying it. I thought Patrick Wilson's performance in the first film was fine as Orm. Amber Heard as Mira was, I mean, average, but good enough for the movie. I really liked Yahya Abdul-Mateen as Black Manta. Nicole Kidman was there. I mean, there wasn't anything super crazy with her performance. But I mean, it was a solid DCEU film. The world has changed since that first Aquaman. I mean, the DCEU is effectively over. This is the last film of the DCEU. They're completely rehauling it, redoing it, and basically starting back from scratch. So the main problem then lies with this film. Why should we care? And that's the main problem that you feel throughout most of this film, is that this is a sequel to Aquaman, but at the end of the day, we know we're not going to get any continuation from these characters. There's already been rumors that Jason Momoa is going to be recast, potentially as Lobo, for the new DC, so we're going to be getting a new Aquaman. So all these characters ultimately don't matter by the end of this movie, and that's really hard to just, like I said, give a shit watching this. Like, you want to watch it because you like these characters and you've seen them before and you like the performances of these characters, but knowing that this is going to be an end point, and knowing that the movie's probably not going to end in a finality kind of point, because when they shot this, the DCEU was still going. So it's like, it feels like very incomplete, much like how The Flash was earlier this summer. It's like it ends on a cliffhanger, but we know we're not going to get a completion to it, so it feels very empty by the end of the film, and that's what this feels like here. With Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, it's solid. it's not bad by any means. I did not hate Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom by any means. It's still enjoyable. You still can enjoy Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry. Patrick Wilson's King Orm, he's doing his best Alexander Skarsgård impression in this film, which he didn't do in the first movie, or at least I don't remember him trying to do that in the first film. But their interactions are more brotherly in this instead of rivals in the first film, and I actually enjoyed that relationship, and the chemistry between them actually worked well. Yahya Abdul-Mateen is back as Black Manta. Like I said, I enjoyed him, so I liked him as the main villain in this, where he was kind of more of a side villain in the first film. Amber Heard, because of all the crap that's been going on with her and Johnny Depp, she is basically relegated to a very small part in this film. She's in it more than I thought she'd be, but she's still barely in the movie. Nicole Kidman is in like a blink and you miss her moment. She's in like maybe 3 scenes. Randall Park definitely gets a bigger character in this film compared to the first movie, probably because his star has risen more since the first Aquaman. Dolph Lundgren's actually in it more than I expected. He's pretty solid. I would say the CG in this is better than The Flash, but the story is better in The Flash than in Aquaman Lost Kingdom. I mean, if you've seen one DCU film, you've seen them all. They kind of all run the same. They kind of all have like the same kind of narrative throughout. It just depends on which one has a little bit better story or which one has kind of the better cast around it. And like I said, with Aquaman and Lost Kingdom, it looks good for what it is. It's a fun ride. I mean, the trailers really kind of make it play off that there's people that are going to die in this. But at the end of the day, when the credits roll and the movie ends, I didn't care. And because we know we're not seeing these characters ever again. But even at the end, it has a very Iron Man type of ending, which I think a lot of people thought was going to be funny, but for me it was just a big eye roll kind of moment because it's like, okay, you're doing the Iron Man thing. It's 2003, that was 2008. You're doing a 15-year-old joke. It was cool then. It's kind of, not anymore. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's not the worst DCEU film to come out this year. It definitely isn't the best. But if you're a fan of Aquaman, you're a fan of Jason Momoa, and you want to see them go out for one last ride, then check out Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It's not something that it's gonna blow you away, but you might have some fun with it. One last hurrah with the DCEU before they finally go away and we get the new James Gunn DC franchises. But at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, I like Momoa, I like Patrick Wilson, I like Yahya. I would be cool if they continued with those characters, but we know they're not. But yeah, that's kind of it for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. For me, I'm going to give it a 73%. It's good for what it is, but it's not something that it's not something that's going to be memorable that you're going to care about, in 6 months because we're moving on to a new regime with DC. Moving on to the next film, we've got Poor Things. This was a movie, I remember when the first trailer came out, I was really not interested in it. I'm going to butcher this director's name. His name's Yorgos Lanthimos. I'm actually surprised that actually sounds correct, but I'm probably way off. The only movie I ever saw him direct was The Favorite, which was also with Emma Stone. And I thought that movie was fine. It was a little kooky. Not kind of my type of film, but I didn't outright hate it. Now, this movie looks like it's just bonkers crazy. And it is. And it's one of those movies where you have to be on board with what's going on, and if you can get on board, you're probably going to have an enjoyable time with this movie. If you cannot get on board with the wackiness of this film, don't waste your time. You're going to hate it, and you're going to just absolutely loathe this movie. I was able to keep an open mind because I kind of was expecting what was going into the film, which it's kind of like a Bride of Frankenstein-esque kind of film. I mean, your general plot for this, and like I said, very general plot of this, is it's the incredible tale about a fantastical evolution of Bella Baxter, a young woman brought back to life by the brilliant and unorthodox scientist Dr. Godwin Baxter, or for short, God. And Godwin Baxter, played by Willem Dafoe, is basically kind of looking like a Frankenstein's monster, but he's actually the Dr. Frankenstein of the story. Willem Dafoe's great. He's great in everything. He's great in this. Emma Stone's basically kind of playing like a Frankenstein's monster character. I call Bride of Frankenstein just because she's female in this movie. But I'm not going to explain... I'm not going to go into details of why she is the way she is, because that's a very big plot point, and it's something that kind of, once it gets unveiled to you, kind of makes you go, oh. And so I'm not going to give that away here. But I've heard a lot of word of mouth that Emma Stone, this is one of her best performances ever, and all this stuff, and I don't know if I want to straight out say this is her best performance ever, but she is damn good in this movie. And I do understand and acknowledge her amazing performance in this, and she does deserve to be nominated. Whether she deserves to win or not, I haven't decided yet, but she definitely deserves an Oscar nomination for this. I also think Mark Ruffalo, who I love Ruffalo. We all love Mark Ruffalo, but I've never seen him in a role that made me go, damn, Ruffalo is great in this. And he is great in this as Duncan Wedderburn. He basically plays this lawyer who takes Bella on this adventure, and I'm saying that in the loosest terms possible because I cannot explain what happens during this, but he plays this... It's kind of hard to explain his character. He's very snobby, aloof. He's crazy. He's absolutely crazy in this, and Ruffalo is entertaining as hell in this movie. I enjoyed the shit out of Mark Ruffalo in this. Visually, like I said, it's a very fantastical world, so you gotta kind of, I don't want to say leave your brain at the door, but you gotta be kind of open to just weird shit happening and not having there be an explanation for it. It's just a very weird world in this. It looks fantastic. I will say this, it's kind of like a big live action cartoon to a point, especially with the backdrops and just the cinematography of the way it's shot. I think the first 20-30 minutes of the film is in black and white, and then it goes to color. But visually, everything looks great. Performance-wise, like I said, Emma Stone's phenomenal in it. Mark Ruffalo is fantastic. Willem Dafoe is great. Yami Youssef, who plays Max, he's really good in the film. All performances, except for Jared Carmichael, I wasn't a real big fan of his performance overall. I feel like his character was kind of like, why are you in this movie? He felt like the one character that didn't really belong in the film with everyone else. The movie's very, very sexual. Very sexual. So definitely don't let kids watch this movie. But it was definitely, certain things happened in this film that I wasn't expecting, wasn't prepared for, and I mean that in a good way for the most part. But yeah, this Emma Stone, her performance is insane, and I mean that in a good way. Every time I feel like I have Emma Stone kind of nailed down as what kind of performance I'm going to get from her, she tends to shock me in good ways. And this is a performance where, as I watched in the trailers, I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. Like, this is going to be really, really bad. This is going to be like Razzie level performance. And she knocks this out of the park. The evolution and growth that Bella goes from in the very first scene that we see her in to the end of the film is amazing. And Emma Stone does a fantastic job as that character of Bella Baxter. And I will say this, as weird as this film was, I was never bored. I was interested and intrigued all the way through this movie. I do say it does kind of lose its way in the near the second act to the third act, and it does probably overstay its welcome by about a good 20 minutes. You probably could have cut some stuff here and there, but at the end of the day, Poor Things was a unique and enjoyable ride, and I would recommend it. I think it's fun, but like I said, it is a movie you have to be on board with. You have to be on board with the uniqueness and the weird kookiness of the movie. If you can't, I don't even recommend wasting your time even trying to watch it, because if you can't get into it in the first 10 minutes, just stop it and go watch something else. But if you can, I guarantee you're going to have a unique experience. Whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, that relies on you. But I had a fun time with it at the end of the day, and I would recommend it for the right people. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give Poor Things an 88%. Going to our final film, this is a movie that I have been anticipating and waiting for pretty much all year, and especially after I saw the first trailer for it, and that is the wrestling film The Iron Claw. Like many people know, I was a professional wrestler for 14 years, so this is a story that is very close to me. Anyone who's a wrestling fan, and when I mean a wrestling fan, I'm not saying the occasional watcher of WWE and AEW. I'm talking about someone who's been a wrestling fan from the 80s and the 90s to today. We all know the Von Erichs. We all know the story, the heartbreaking story of the Von Erichs. And when we heard that this movie was being made, we're like, ooh, this is going to be a rough movie to watch. And then we saw the casting, and we saw that Zac Efron was going to be casted as Kevin Von Erich. And myself and Brian, my co-host, we have been talking about how much we like Zac Efron, but he still hasn't had this career-defining performance where we basically go, Zac has now hit that next level. And there's been a couple of films that have come out in the last few years where we're like, this is going to be that moment. This is going to be the moment that Zac Efron's going to hit the next level. We thought it was going to be that with the Ted Bundy film. It wasn't. I thought it was going to be it with the greatest beer run ever. It was good, but it wasn't a career-defining moment. Iron Claw is that performance for Zac Efron. Hands down, his best performance to date. Zac Efron destroys this film. And when I say that, and that's the thing, is a lot of people are expecting like this big over-the-top performance by him. And that is not what Kevin Von Erich, which is the actor he plays, or the character he plays in the film. Kevin Von Erich is this quiet thunderstorm throughout this movie. He's the structure of the Von Erich family. While you have Carrie, played by Jeremy Allen White, who I love in The Bear and Shameless. He's flamboyant. His brother David is flamboyant. And his brother Mike is eccentric with his music. Kevin is the one sibling that is the one you can rely on. He's the athlete. He's pure. He's quiet. He does what he's told. He's the good son. He's the role model that everyone should strive to be. And because of that, when the younger brothers are more flamboyant and charismatic and are more flashy, and Kevin kind of gets overlooked and downplayed because of it, because he's good and he's reliable, but he's not the flashy choice. It's that thunderous storm inside of him wanting to break out and wanting him to kind of unleash, and he can't. He keeps it held in, and a lot of this performance through Zac Efron is sold through his eyes and his facial reactions, because he can't express himself the way that his other brothers do and stuff like that. And Zac Efron does a phenomenal job in this film. I was enthralled by his performance throughout. Like I said, the rest of the cast, Jeremy Allen White as Kerry Von Erich, which is probably the most notable one for many people who know him as the Texas Tornado in the early 90s in WWE. I love Jeremy Allen White. I will say I wish we got a little more of him in the film than what we got, because he is probably the one Von Erich that most people know because of WWF. There were parts of his story that I know personally, and for anyone who doesn't, Dark Side of the Ring, I think it's episode 1, season 4, season 5, they do a whole episode on the Von Erichs. Watch that, whether before or after this film. Definitely check that out. There was more to Carrie's story that I wish we would have gotten in this film that we didn't. Mainly also because I just wanted Jeremy Allen White to just have a bigger presence in this film. I wanted him to have the same kind of presence that Zac Efron had in this movie. But we don't get that. He's great in what we get. I just wanted a little bit more. I will say this, the other big standout in this film, outside of Zac Efron, is Holt McElhenney, as Fritz Von Erich, their father. I've always been a fan of Holt. I've loved watching him through the years. If you guys have not checked out Mindhunters on Netflix, check that out. It's amazing. He has this aura of Fritz Von Erich. It's amazing. Holt deserves a supporting actor nom. He's so amazing in this role. He's a character that you want to hate. He's a character that you understand, especially for Texas, and whether it's football or pro wrestling. He's hard on his boys. He's borderline abusive to them, but he doesn't outright beat them or anything like that. But he knows how to pull their strings. He knows how to pit them against each other. He knows how to get the best and the worst out of them at any given moment. And Holt does a phenomenal job in this role, right up there with Zac Efron. Maura Tierney, many people know her from ER. She plays Doris Von Erich, the mother of the Von Erich kids. I was about to say as I was watching the movie, like I wish she had a little bit more, but she does have this. She has this one scene about in the middle of the film. All I'll say is it's about a dress, and it's such a heartbreaking moment in that film where I was like, this is the scene I wanted from her, and she's once again a very subtle performance throughout the film, but she does get these brief moments in the movie where she really gets to show off her skills. Harris Dickinson, who plays David Von Erich, he's really solid in the film. Also, I'm looking for Mike here. Stanley Simmons, who plays Mike Von Erich, he gets a lot to do, and I think he does a really good job. Now, negatives. Actually, no, hold on. Before I go to the negatives, one more positive was Zac Efron's performance. Zac Efron and Jeremy Allen White and Harris Dickinson, they trained their butts off for this. And for me, when it comes to pro wrestling movies, I am very critical about films like this because if you're going to be a wrestler, you have to work like a wrestler. You have to act like a wrestler. I have to believe that you're a wrestler. Don't put an actor in the ring and then have them do the bare bone minimum of what wrestling is, because I'm not going to buy into that story. Michael Rooker did perfectly in The Wrestler because he won an Oscar for it, and well deserved. Zac Efron runs like a wrestler. He bumps like a wrestler. He gets up like a wrestler. There's literally a point in this movie where he takes a hard fall, and he had me sold on it, on whether or not his character, because like I said, it was in the 80s. I wasn't born yet when this part happened. Is he selling or is he actually hurt? And Zac sells this so beautifully. It's such a great acting moment that made me go, damn, Zac's killing this. And this was like one of the, in the first half of the film. But watching Zac perform in this movie as Kevin Von Erich, I could buy that Zac Efron could get in a wrestling ring today and wrestle. Is he going to put on a 5-star caliber match against like a Randy Orton or an MJF who's also in the film in a blink or you miss it moment? No, but I do think he can get in the ring and actually wrestle and actually do a decent job because he has the fundamentals down pat. And that's all I really want out of an acting film for pro wrestling is make sure the wrestling looks good. Make sure you're doing the moves correctly and you're doing the fundamentals correctly. And everyone in this movie does it, and I applaud them for doing that in this film. And the director is Sean Durkin. I applaud him for what he does here for that. Now to the negatives. As much as I love this film, because this is one of my favorite films of the year, I know with true stories, you have to kind of change certain things. You kind of have to do certain things because of, story connectivity and flow. And if you do everything, the story's going to be 5 hours long, and you can't do that. You have to condense things down. If you watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode, you're going to be a little confused, especially after you watch this film. They completely take one of the brothers out of the movie. Chris Von Erich, he's the youngest. He is not in the film. They basically, and I read an interview about it, why the director did this, and it was more or less that the movie was going to be too depressing if Chris's character was in the film. And there's certain things that happen in the movie that are too similar to some other brothers, so he basically combines Chris and Mike's into one character. They basically use the Mike character and Chris, and they just make him into one, which I get it. I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but it doesn't make me hate the movie. I understand it too. I understand flow of the story and everything like that. It kind of just left me a little bit with a bad taste in my mouth to just completely remove a brother from a story like this, of this caliber, because what happens to Chris in real life was an important aspect to the story. There's another character by the name of Lance. He is in the movie, but they don't ever really introduce him to anybody. I only knew this character was Lance because I saw the credit sheet at the end of the movie. That is a very vital, important part of the Von Erich storyline. It's not utilized in the film at all. Now, the Dark Side of the Ring episode will explain that, but once again, all this stuff, if it was thrown in the movie, it probably would have been 3-4 hours long, which I totally would have been there for that. The only real negative else I got, and this one is just... I've heard a lot of people bitch about it. A lot of people are boycotting the movie because of this, which I think is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. The performance of the actor, I had to look up who it is, but the actor who played Ric Flair, That is one of the worst impersonations for Ric Flair. Aaron Dean Eisenberg. Ric Flair is an iconic character. He's an iconic personality. And the person who's playing him, which is Aaron Dean Eisenberg, this is one of the worst Ric Flair impersonations I've ever seen. You don't look like Ric Flair. You don't have the persona of Ric Flair. The one thing that makes Ric Flair is the woo. And you couldn't even woo correctly. And I kept trying to go, oh, well, it's 1980s Ric Flair. He's not the Ric Flair that he is today. And I kept trying to, find reasons to defend the performance. But then I went back and watched, those interviews of Ric Flair in the 80s. And he basically pretty much is like Ric Flair today, except less, old man crazy. This guy puts a horrible performance on. There are hundreds, thousands of people that I could see put on a better performance as Ric Flair in this movie than Aaron Dean Eisenberg. Granted, he's only in it for maybe a combined 5 to 7 minutes of the film, but it stands out like a sore thumb, and it's really irritating to see that Ric Flair, probably the biggest name in this movie, is easily the worst performance of the film. Other than that, everyone else is fantastic in the movie. Also, I didn't mention her. Lily James plays Pam, which is the love interest to Kevin Von Erich. She doesn't get as much to do in the movie. She's solid. I'm not going to say she's great, but she's solid in the film, and I like Lily James. Could they give her more to do? Sure. But the story is about the Von Erich kids, not their, love life and stuff like that. The wrestling is great. The story is great. It is heartbreaking. It is tearing your heart out by the end of the film. I was in tears by the end of the movie because I believed everything we got out of this. And like I said, Zac Efron puts on a career-defining performance. Holt McElhenney is amazing in this as Fritz. I loved this movie. Could not recommend this film more. Whether you're a wrestling fan or not, this is a must-watch film of the year for me. I'm going to give Iron Claw a 95%. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this review roundup. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, we're going to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we'll have another one of these where I'm going to be reviewing Migration, The Holdovers, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of... it's such a long title. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, The Family Plan, and Napoleon. Also, coming out here in the next week and a half, Brian Michaels and myself will be doing our end of the year episodes where we will talk about the most disappointing films in the year, the most surprising films of the year, the best and the worst films of 2023, as well as our most anticipated films of 2024. Also, next year, we're going to be adding a new show to the channel, a pro wrestling show, absolutely, where myself and my new co-host for that, Jordan Owens, we will be talking about pro wrestling. We might bring some other people on the show. I don't know exactly what we're going to do yet, but we're definitely going to be talking about pro wrestling and not movies. So if you guys are fans of pro wrestling, stick around for that. We're going to be starting that here in January, probably around mid-January, right before the Royal Rumble starts. But yes, we got plenty of videos coming out here in the next week or two. So if you guys have been missing me, it was holiday season. I was trying to enjoy holidays with the family, plus I had a cold, so I had to kind of wait for myself to get better. But we have plenty of stuff coming on the channel, so stick around. I hope you guys stick around, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know in the comments below, did you watch any of these films? What did you think of these 5 movies? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Let me hear about them in the comments. But until next time, in case I don't see you, go watch some movies and go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.